Hi to all Inderes TV viewers and listeners. We have a special guest today from Epredia, Stephen Lynum. Stephen, welcome to Inderes TV.
Thank you.
You are working with Aiforia in the digital pathology market, and we're diving now deeper into the market and what's happening there, which I'm sure is very interesting also to Aiforia investors and people interested in Aiforia. But you're a new face to Inderes TV, so could you introduce yourself and also what Epredia does?
So thanks for the opportunity to be here. So my name is Stephen Lynum. So I'm president and CEO of Epredia, which is a member of PHC Group. And PHC Group is publicly traded on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. So what Epredia does is actually we have the full workflow for the pathologist. So we start from we have the formalin embedded containers. Then we go forward and we have the grossing stations, we have the tissue processors, we have the stainers, we have the embedding equipment, and then the scanners, and then archiving. So we cover everything in the lab for a pathologist except for AI. And that's why we were very interested in Aiforia, and that's why actually I'm in Finland this time. So for us, we have everything there. We cover 120 countries, 1,500 employees, and I think Aiforia is a very important partner. That's why we made an investment in Aiforia recently.
Right. So you are a partner with Aiforia, and you also have an ownership stake in Aiforia. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So we actually invested before they went public. So we were one of the earlier investors. We invested, I think right now we have about 7.5% share in the company. And we realized that, when we saw their technology, we said, this is something very special. And if they had the proper commercial platform, they would be able to get out to market much faster. So we did make that investment. And shortly thereafter, they went public. And now we are where we are.
Yeah. So I guess you have a pretty unique perspective and view, at least globally, on what's happening in the digital pathology market. Overall, if you just dive deeper into the market and you can share your experiences on what's happening there, I guess overall healthcare buyers are seen as conservative. Of course, there's lots of regulation happening, but are you seeing this to be the case in digital pathology?
Yes, to be very honest. The pathology space is very, very conservative. So I think modern day pathology was founded about 150 years ago. And that's when pathology went from organ-based disease to cell-based disease. And that happened 150 years ago. And they started using microscopes and analyzing things. And it became, it hasn't changed ever since. So, but the challenge that we have right now in this field is it's so conservative, but the number of pathologists are decreasing every year. So I think the NHS 2 years ago did a report. They said that right now 25% of all the pathologists in the UK are over the age of 57. So this means that there's a lot of pathologists about to retire. And there's not that many new pathologists coming in. And for that reason, you have older-based pathologists who are older, a little bit more conservative. And it's a great opportunity for digital pathology and AI. So I think that is actually an issue. It is a very conservative market.
Right. So I guess it's easy to argue that there is demand for solutions that make it more efficient to run those pathology labs. If we think of the timing, why the market is moving ahead right now, and how has that kind of perspective of the buyers changed over the last years? Why do you think the market, or where do you think the market is in terms of its maturity and pace of movement right now, and what drivers do you see there?
Well, that's a great question. Actually, the market right now, there's really two factors why the market suddenly picked up so fast right now. One is oncology research. So that's something that's, becoming more and more advanced as we go forward. People are looking at cancer diagnostics. The analysis of tissue is becoming more and more complex. So it used to be that you'd run one test or two tests, but now you have several markers. So you have a cocktail of different types of antibodies going in to diagnose tissue to look for cancer. And it's very difficult to do that with the human eye now. Because originally when you use a stainer like a H&E stain, which is a standard stain that you'd use, you'd basically just see two colors. And what the pathologist would do would be looking at it and then clicking and counting the number of a certain color, whether it's pink or brown. They'd be counting that. But now when you have these cocktails, suddenly you end up with 5 colors or 10 colors or 20 colors. And it's very difficult to analyze that unless you have a proper scanner and artificial intelligence behind there. So I think this is one demand that came up. So you have all these advanced tests coming out and the number of pathologists is going down. So you're going to face that pressure. So there's a huge demand to digitize and use more artificial intelligence in the cancer field. And as we mentioned, the field is very, very conservative. So even though oncologists wanted to do it, the pathologists did not. But then COVID came. So COVID was really the factor that came in, where you had these hospitals that were dealing with the pandemic and trying to prevent, non-first line medical people from being in the hospital because they didn't want to contaminate the hospital, right? So you'd have a lot of the pathologists and people that were sort of told, please stay at home. For emergency cases, we'll send you cases or bring you in. But then, everybody started realizing that there's digital pathology out there. So why don't we just scan the data in the hospital, send it remotely to them, and let them work in their own office or at their home or their doctor's office? So I think that's where you saw that oncology came first, COVID came, and then people realized, wow, this is actually a market that's picking up very fast. And now the next reason why it's going even faster now is after spending all that money on the COVID pandemic, hospitals need to cut back on their costs because they've used a lot of money right now. So they need to become more and more efficient. And one way to improve efficiency is by using that type of artificial intelligence and having workflow optimization by scanning things and having the computer sort of decide, okay, these are important cases, these are routine cases, and it sort of improves the workflow. So we've seen, just for your reference, we've seen probably about 40% efficiency improvement by the big hospitals that employed digital pathology and AI.
Right. Well, would it be fair to say that first there was sort of this realization in the research side that there's benefits to using technology, and then sort of the realization came also to clinical side that there's lots of benefits from going this way also on that side, and now we're sort of riding that way forward?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it always starts with the research side, and that's where it really blooms. And that's why, from Epredia standpoint, 80% of our sales globally is to the clinical side. That's why when we saw that Aiforia was working the research side so efficiently, we knew that, okay, once this is ready, it needs a channel. And then that's where Epredia came in and said, well, this is something that the clinicians would benefit from.
Yeah. Going to the clinical customers, of course, you're operating in globally and talking to a lot of customers. How much movement do you see on the clinical side in pushing digital pathology forward right now?
I think there's a huge movement. If you look, for example, the largest market for healthcare is the United States. You had the FDA come out and give an emergency use authorization to allow a lot of the clinicians to use scanners and certain AI in the background. So there's a huge movement there. We're seeing, especially Aiforia, I believe maybe you've seen on their press release, they did sign up the Mayo Clinic, which is a very large institution in the US and well known globally. So I think there's more and more movement into the space right now.
Very interesting. Going into the value chain in different parts of digital pathology, Aiforia is of course working on the AI side of image recognition and automating the pathologist work. If you think of the entire workflow in digital pathology, what is the role of AI solutions like Aiforia, and how much value do they generate in the overall workflow?
I think the interesting thing about AI now is we're seeing a lot of pull-through, and this has happened probably in the last 6 to 9 months, where we're seeing the pull-through of other equipment and other consumables because of AI. And it sounds a little bit strange, but in the beginning when I introduced our company and I walked you through the workflow, now AI helps us work backwards through the workflow. So this means that if you have an AI module and you want to use it, in order to do that, you have to have a scanner. So if you have the best scanner on the market, that helps you. But then if you have the best scanner, but you don't have good slides, the scanner won't work. So it's pushing people back and becoming more quality focused. So you go from the AI to the scanner, then you go to the glass slide. From the glass slide you go to the stain, and then you go to the tissue processor, and then so it just keeps going to the front. So what we found actually at Epredia is that by getting more people involved with digital pathology and AI, we're getting a lot more revenue from the upstream. So because we call this downstream, meaning the AI and digital pathology, but the upstream, which is pre-analytical and really just people, it used to be very cost conscious. People would say, get the cheapest glass slides, get the cheapest stains. But now they're realizing that, in order to remove the inefficiencies upstream and have a more robust downstream product, you need to, have the proper stuff upstream. So this, and just, for your reference, Epredia, we've been a glass manufacturer for many, many years. And we probably have 35% market share of glass. And we realized that this was coming. So 3 years ago, we started innovating on our glass. So the glass slides that we manufacture now compared to 3 years ago are 35% more flat and more smooth in order to enhance the scanning, which enhances the output that goes to the AI. So this is the interesting thing about it, the field. So you're seeing that AI is really helping the whole field improve its quality, which is really, really exciting stuff right now.
Would it be fair to say that AI is sort of elevating the entire workflow?
Yes,
as it's brought in?
Exactly. And not only for the consumables, but even for the pathologists. Because a standard pathologist would sit in his lab, look at maybe 200 cases a day. They look through, and by the time you get to 195, 196, you get really tired, right? And sometimes there are mistakes, right? So, but what AI is doing now is it's checking in the background. So nothing's changed for the workflow. The pathologist is still doing his job and doing everything, but in the background, this is running, and then it'll point out and say, you might have a region of interest that gets pointed out by the AI saying, hey, are you sure this isn't something you want to look at again? And then pushing it back in. So that's also improving the pathologist's output as well. So it's really exciting stuff. And I think this is something that the Mayo Clinic and other large institutions have been really focused on right now, on how to improve the quality of care.
Right. And I guess longer term, there's also opportunity for AI software to actually do some of the pathologist work right away for them. And then the pathologist might just check and then what's in the slide and get efficiency benefits from that.
Yeah. And that's part of that 40% improvement that we're seeing. Like if they're going through those 200 slides, at nighttime, what happens is you have those slides, you put it into the scanner, you come in the morning, and normally the hospital, somebody would go through and pass them to the pathologist. Now the AI can run in the background and say, okay, these are routine, and these are they'll pretty much be close to diagnosing it. But, for regulatory reasons, you don't want the AI to diagnose in most cases. But they can give a suggestion, say these 50 are routine, give these to the new pathologist. These 20 are really tough ones, and they're for breast cancer or something, give those to a specialist. And they split it up, so you come in first thing in the morning, you've got your workflow all organized, and the pathologists know exactly what to look at. And that's what saves the 40%, and and that saves healthcare costs for whoever's paying for the healthcare as well.
Right, that's very interesting. If we still discuss the players in the market, of course there's the physical hardware products that you have to have in the lab, and then there's the software coming in. What kind of companies and what kind of sort of competitive setups are there from digital pathology providers like Epredia and Aiforia to serve the customers? Do the customers want to buy the entire workflow, or is it more getting bits and pieces out of it? How do you see the overall approach? How is this market being built?
Well, I think there's probably just several different markets. So you have like the research use only market. They might be just getting bits and pieces, just trying things out. But you have to remember, in that case, you're losing that clinical workflow dynamic. So it's probably not the most efficient way, but it helps with their research. So I think those people would be bits and pieces. If you go to the clinics, they would probably look at the full solution and the impact to the overall workflow. And if you go to big pharma, they're pretty much looking at which best pieces can they acquire in order to put it in there. So the interesting thing about Aiforia is that they actually play in all three of those segments with different solutions that they have. And that's why I personally was very interested in it when we made that initial investment, because they looked at one platform for research, one for clinicians, and one for the big pharma, which is very important.
Right. So if you're going to discuss with a clinical customer, you're basically offering the hardware from Epredia's channels and then also Aiforia software as a package. Is that a typical way to go? towards the customer?
Yeah, we're finding over the past, probably about the past 3 months, that the most successful sales that we have are, because we're having clinicians approach us. They're saying, well, we heard that you have Aiforia, can we talk about it? And then we'll go in and talk to them and say, okay, if you want to get access to the Aiforia platform, you need to have a scanner, and then you need to have the glass, you need to have the other components. So we set them up and walk them through their workflow. And that's very important when you're talking in the clinician's space. And that's where I think a partner such as Epredia is very valuable for Aiforia, because it really gives the market access to their product.
Right, that makes sense. And I guess especially for the new customers, that's the way to go towards, especially if they don't have the digital pathology tools already. But I guess there's also a part of the market that have those slide scanners, certain software in place. Do you think it's more typical that the customer is sort of going for the full workflow of products, or is there a significant clinical market also for kind of buying the bits and pieces still and adding towards existing solutions?
Oh yeah, I think there's a lot of people that made investments over the past several years. So they would have the little pieces, and they can just plug in the Aiforia platform to that. So and then that works perfectly well as well. So that there's no reason to buy everything. But in order, if somebody's new to it, we'd suggest them through the workflow, offering them different parts of it. But I think certain people would already have the product as well.
Yeah, right. Final thing, of course, you are partnering with Aiforia. You have ownership stake in the company, so obviously there is a belief that this company is doing something good since you made that selection. But there is a lot of players in the AI segment of this market. What made you pick Aiforia over others?
That's an interesting question. So actually, it was one of our shareholders that reached out about 2 years ago, a very large shareholder that was behind us before PHC Group went public. And they called just before Christmas, and they said, hey, there's a company out there called Aiforia. Do you know about them? And actually, I did know about them because they had published a patent on October 13th, 2020. So they had a US patent released, and we were actually looking into them, and we thought, wow, they've got something very interesting here. So, and then they said, I heard from our shareholder that it looks like they're going to try to raise some funding, and took the opportunity, even during the pandemic, we came over here and came to Helsinki. And, for me personally, I was very interested in coming to Helsinki because I've been with the company for 33 years. And part of those 33 years, I did spend 10 years doing cellular communications, which we were competing very heavily with Nokia at that time because I was at Panasonic's communications division. So I knew that there's some really smart people here in Helsinki, and I thought, okay, let's come out here and take a look. So we met with the team during the pandemic, and that first meeting we had was really inspirational because I met the founders, and they gave me this really nice story about why they're doing it. And they talked about they wanted to give people access to better healthcare. And they were doing it. One of the founders was doing some research in Africa and trying to provide access to pathologists who were in Scandinavia but didn't have access to the proper healthcare system. So using the digital network and using AI and trying to help with this, it was more geared towards women's health. And that was something I thought was, it was very inspirational. I thought that they're doing the right thing. And then the more we spoke about it, I'm not a physician, so they talked me through, this is what we're doing for women's health. This is what we believe the software can really do. And we have a nice solution. And then they stepped back and they said, do you understand what we're talking about? And I sort of got it, but some of it I didn't at that point. And then they said, well, let's look at it. And they flipped some slides up on the screen. And they showed me a picture of salmon skin color. And they said, look, we can tell the health of the fish by looking at this. Then they flipped something up about the concrete industry, which showed the permeability of concrete, to see the concrete strength. And just from my personal background, I have a friend in Japan who helped build the Tokyo Olympic Stadium for the 2020 Olympics. So I'd actually seen that type of photo maybe about a few weeks before that meeting. And then I told Johan, I said, that's a construction picture. And he said, well, how do you know that? And then we chatted. And then I realized they don't only do this for healthcare, they understand the data science. And since they were so deep into it, they knew all the different approaches they could do, but they chose healthcare because that was the most noble, I believe, to do. And I thought, wow, these people here are very special. And that's well, after that meeting, I went back and spoke to our investment committee, and we said, well, let's go in and we'll make the investment. And as we made the investment and we joined the board and we saw, wow, this is going to escalate very fast, we said we might as well give them access to the public markets. And that's when they went public on the NASDAQ here in Finland. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity. It's very unusual to find these type of gems out there. And considering there's 800-900 different AI companies, we found this one. I feel that this is a special place. And now with my position now at Epredia, I'm going to utilize this, start bundling it with our scanners, make it a standard product that goes out there when we help upgrade clinics and things like that. So I think it's a great team that they have here.
Yeah. I mean, there's many different players that all say they do AI-powered image analysis. But I guess what you saw was that the product and technology that Aiforia has stood out from that crowd.
Yeah, it stood out because of what they're doing for society, which is maybe other people say they do that as well. But the very interesting thing is the technical aspect of their software is it's continuously upgrading. And so it's continuously improving, very similar to Epredia's manufacturing. So we belong in the lean system of manufacturing, which came out of Japan, and we're a Japan-based company, right? So what we believe is you produce something, you look at the feedback, you see how it goes, you make changes. And it's PDCA cycle that just keeps going. So the Aiforia software actually has that built in. So you're always doing this continuous quality check. So the Aiforia module that's on the market right now, for example, for the Mayo Clinic, in 6 months from now, it'll be the same module, but it'll be continuously improving. It just gets better and better and better, and that's part of the thing that's different from other people. So it's using this AI platform with the deep learning and a neural network, which is a little bit different from what some of the other institutions are doing. Because you might know some other institutions, what they do is they get a huge database, and then they lock it in. They say, okay, we did the algorithm. This is how it works. And that's it. It never improves. It's just based on that database.
Yeah.
So unless you get a new database, it won't improve. But the Aiforia platform it trains itself and just keeps running and running. And that's what's different. And that's something I personally believe is what sets them apart.
Thank you, Stephen. These insights were very helpful. Thanks a lot for taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah, thank you. It was great meeting you.